Jane Velez-MItchell with breaking news from North Carolina. We are on the ground with two photojournalists, the very well-known Joanne McArthur of We Animals and Kelly Guerin. These two brave individuals are literally risking their health and their lives to go in and document what's happening to millions of animals, 3.4 million animals at least, that were left to drown in warehouses. And I wanted to ask you, Joanne, about this whole concept of animals now being reduced to live inventory, which is how one of the so-called farmers reportedly described these animals left in warehouses to die.
First of all, thanks for having us on the show. We really appreciate being able to talk about these important stories and these individuals. You mentioned a number, 3.4 million, but that's the industry estimate. And of course, they're going to downplay numbers. And so based on what we've seen, we imagine that there's a lot more. The numbers are going to be much higher. And we won't see those animals because word is that they will be composting those animals within the barns. You know, they're never going to take them out or bulldoze them out and cremate them. So that might be something that just does not get seen by the public. And as for inventory, that is the industry terminology as well. These animals are classified as products and inventory. And so we're able to see what the industry is putting out on the internet for their, PR purposes and inventory. So this is as far as it can possibly get from like any kind of compassion or acknowledgement of sentience of these animals.
Kelly, you took this photo of pigs swimming in the floodwaters. You can just see their little ears popping up. What runs through you emotionally? What are you feeling when you're seeing this carnage and this callous treatment of millions of farm animals that the mainstream media does not even discuss for 1 second? What runs through you?
Well, at first, when I was taking the photo, it was good feelings because they were swimming towards the traffic island that we were on. We had stayed out on this stranded stretch of bridge all night after discovering a few pigs that had washed up on the shore. And so by the time the pigs were swimming towards us, we had a rescue plan in place for them. So some local groups were coming by with a trailer in the morning. And so the pigs swimming to us was just a wonderful sight to see that any had survived. As we slept on the bridge at night, we could hear the thumping of pigs' bodies floating down the stream, hitting the underside of the bridge. And in the morning, we saw them stuck in the branches. So as horrible as it is to see them swimming, they were the lucky ones. But unfortunately, during the rescue, the farmer came back, or who claimed to be the farmer came back, and we had to leave all of these pigs behind again. So looking at this picture now, just remembering everything that they had to go through to escape their farm, to survive in that horrible water. I can't even describe how terribly it smells to go swimming in it and to swim past their other dead, pigs. They've been through so much by the time I took that picture that it just breaks my heart to look back on it now.
I feel that this is a turning point. This marks the complete and utter moral bankruptcy of this industry, that there is no way to evacuate hundreds of thousands of chickens or pigs. They are in an area that has been flooded before, is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so they basically stock these animals, call them live inventory. This is the ultimate example of what we as a culture have reduced these animals to. They're not even victims. They can't even be considered victims. That is verboten to say that. They have to be called live inventory, as if they had no feelings, as if they were things. I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted. And I know so many other people are. We've been going live with different people from the ground and people who work with animals, like Renee King-Sonnen, who was a cattle rancher who's become a sanctuary leader. And this is the bottom. This has to be the turning point for us as a society to realize that this is sick. It's sick. It's morally reprehensible to take these animals who had mothers and who feel pain and who dream and who are smarter than our dogs and say they're live inventory.
Yeah, if this isn't the bottom, I honestly don't know what is. And there is actually so few people on the ground recording. You know, there's a handful of activists. I mean, considering the numbers that should be out here, you know, documenting this tragedy, there are just so few of us, and we really appreciate anyone in the media who is going to have the guts to look at this and call out the industry the way you are doing very well right now. I mean, it is completely immoral and disgusting and base to call these animals inventory. And we won't be here much longer. We've been here a week. We've done as much as we can. We have to, fly out, and we're doing other things starting tomorrow. But we need people to come and to look and to document and to care and to talk and to write and to see what we've seen.
We can't even show the most graphic photos because then it just limits the ability to send it out because it's considered graphic. The photos are revolting, nauseating. They're beyond any kind of nightmarish dystopia that I could even imagine in a horror film. And yet the media's coverage is so strange. They will talk about the manure lagoons created by these animals, and they will talk about how it impacts the humans. But not for 1 second, for literally 1 second, will there be any discussion of the actual animals who were left in warehouses to drown. They are in warehouses. Paint that picture for me, because I don't think the PR flack sent out some message that they were trying to get their animals to higher ground. Maybe they were, and the media just took that. They didn't ask any questions. They just took that and went with that. But the truth is that a lot of these animals were just left in these warehouses. Imagine being in a darkened warehouse and the water is rising and rising and rising and rising, and you're trapped there and there's nobody there taking care of you, and you're stuck and the water goes up here and then you thrash to death. I mean, if this isn't institutionalized sadism, I do not know what is.
It's interesting. You said earlier, it made me realize, you said you can't publish the graphic images. They're too graphic. It'll turn people off. And yet, how does that work with these animals being considered inventory? If they're just inventory, how can any of this be should even care? And yet there's this irony, there's this dichotomy, like too graphic, dead animal, and yet let's just drown millions of inventory. And Kelly can speak to you though about the sheds and going to the sheds, because she took that incredible film of going into and around the barns. She got really good access.
Yeah, tell us about that. Now, this is just a screen grab as you're going into this barn. And again, it's out of a horror movie. What was going on there?
And it's funny you use the term dystopian, because we've been using that word a lot around here. This is where we're headed if things don't change, including being underwater. This barn that we're actually seeing here was a flooded turkey barn. And there were no animals except for one. There was one floating turkey body, and he or she seemed to be full size. So what we've been hearing here, because they're inventory, if they were roughly the same size as they would be when they went to slaughter, they just slaughtered them early. If they were too young, they couldn't make a profit on them. They couldn't move them to any higher ground, because the reality is you just can't move millions of farm animals. Where are you going to put them? So the ones that were too young to be slaughtered were left in the barns, and the farmers don't want them floating out of the doors and into the neighborhoods, because that allows for photo opportunities, that allows for people to see and ask questions and realize how many animals died. So we actually came upon a row of about 6 chicken barns, and they were all closed except for one who had its door open, and there was this slow stream of fleas coming out of there, and I can't even describe to you, once again, the stench, and realizing that all of those birds just died in the most nightmarish way possible. But anybody who's upset about them drowning in the barns, and mad at the farmers for not getting them out, that's just not how factory farming works. You can't move them to any better place. So they are in there because we keep them in there as a society, because there's a demand for them to be in there, and this will happen again. And it's not just the birds and the cows and the pigs that we've seen. We documented a mass dying the other day of, it was at least 100,000 fish, probably more, in Greenfields Park in Wilmington, and fish can die.
Well, you've broken up for a second, but I want to show a photo that was taken by another guest we had on earlier this week, Ethically Elizabeth. I don't know if you've run into her. She's also been going around. And I want just to see one of the victims, one of the 3.4 million victims, and that number, as Joanne McArthur and Kelly Guerin mentioned, is expected to rise. This is a little piglet. This is a little piglet who lived a horrible life and died a horrible death. And ultimately, if you eat animals, this is what, I'm sorry to say, you are responsible for. Because all of this is happening because people eat bacon and ham and hot dogs and pork chops and baby back ribs, and they don't think twice about it. And some of those people are saying, this is so awful and this is so terrible. And a lot of the people who are watching are vegans, but some of them aren't. And if this isn't a wake-up call to change your diet and stop subsidizing this horror, I do not know what is.
Yeah, people are quick to just blame the disaster that is the flood, or, blame the farmers in the manure lagoons. But the reason we have all of those problems with the hog farming, the pig farming, local language, and the manure lagoons is because we are demanding those products and we want them cheaply. And it's so interesting that people fail to make the connection that they are responsible. They don't want manure lagoons flooding their communities and killing their oceans, but they want bacon. It's really interesting.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the people impacted by these manure lagoons. They're like giant lakes of, you can call it what you want, excrement, manure lagoons. Some of them have overflown. And by the way, we invite any farmer on from this area or the industry anytime. I would love to talk to them. Because I will officially right now call for these warehouses not to be restocked. These warehouses should not be restocked with new live inventory. Yeah. Absolutely. And do you second that call, Joanne and Kelly?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. There are other types of farming they can do. They need government subsidies, for transitions, surely. But they need support to do it. But they're killing the earth. This is about the animals and their suffering. But, North Carolina is going to be a cesspool of toxins and poo and everything for, decades. And the NASA videos of the runoff into the, what kind of, you can't go in, because everything is so polluted. Communities, people don't want to the stench, and because they can get cancer. And we should say this is news to us because there's a hurricane, but to the people who have been living around these farms, this is nothing new, and they have been impacted by this for decades now. And they have been fighting against this for decades because it is in their backyard, and it has been in their backyard. Because it's flooded now, it's in more people's backyards and we can see it. But this is nothing new, and it's not a one-off because of a hurricane. I'm going to plug in the computer. You guys keep going. Be right back. Okay.
Well, let me just say this. I would like to know, Kelly, what's happening with these people who are living in the vicinity of these manure lagoons that are overflowing. I mean, honestly, I'm seeing a tsunami of excrement in my mind. Describe it if you would.
We have been talking to a lot of people on the ground, a lot of community organizers. We're going back out to Duplin County today, one of the most heavily impacted communities in North Carolina, with the most densely populated factory farms. And what they will tell you is they put these farms in the areas and populations of people that do not have the political power behind them to change it. So it's largely communities of color. It's undoubtedly poor communities, and it's people who have been fighting against this, very brave local activists who are standing up against a very powerful and corrupt industry to be talking about what it's been doing to their homes, their family homes. Some of them have had their homes since their grandparents were freed from slavery, and they have memories of running around the grass barefoot and swimming in the lakes, and they do not have that anymore. And they have terrible breathing problems. And so the floodwater is not a welcome visitor, and it's getting higher, but they will tell you that this is nothing new, and they are glad that people are watching.
What can happen? Because people are watching, but in all this discussion with all these very smart people talking about the manure lagoons, one thing that's never mentioned is, let's end this.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the terrible manure lagoons. Well, hello, if it's terrible, if it's bad for the environment, if it's horrific for these communities who, as you mentioned, don't have a lot of political clout, poor and primarily communities of color, if there's, it's unsustainable because we're going to have more hurricanes and floods due to climate change, which is due, ironically, to animal agriculture, the leading cause, arguably, and far more than all transportation combined, according to the United Nations, animal agriculture. So what can we do, Joanne? I mean, we're talking about this problem. At least we're making an intention. Shut these warehouses down. Do not open them. And where do we take that call to action from here?
Well, there are so many ways, but you're reminding me of Dr. Melanie Joy's philosophies on carnism. Like carnism, people don't realize, they see vegetarianism and veganism as an ideology, but really, like, they are part of one as well. It's just really, really ingrained in the culture and belief systems. I mean, people have been eating meat their whole lives, so they're like, well, it's our culture, it's what we do. But like, everything changes, culture changes, it's a fluid thing. And so a lot of education is needed that, just because you do it doesn't mean you should continue to do it. And especially at this point in history where everything is so completely dire and we're just trashing the world, we have to really consider our actions. And there are so many wonderful things that we can do, like stop eating animals. And especially, worldwide now, there are vegan products everywhere, and they're delicious. No one is suffering from changing their diets. And in fact, they'll be healthier, less heart disease and the rest. The environment will be healthier. The animals will not be suffering. So a lot of education is needed around that, and sharing those messages with enthusiasm, and showing that being vegan is a really happy and healthy way to be. Do you want to add to that, or that kind of sums it up? And again, a lot of people on the ground who have been living with this are they themselves have given up animal products, and they are calling for a complete boycott of particularly pork products, because that's what's most directly impacting their communities. So it's happening. It's already happening.
Well, I know there have been lawsuits, and I don't want to get into the details because I don't want to be inaccurate by misdescribing anything, but I know that there's lawsuits involving this industry that are with a lot of plaintiffs What is going to happen with the people on the ground? Because I would like to hear from those people. I would like to hear from somebody whose house has been washed away or covered with pork. I don't even want to use the word pork. Okay, that's taking it away from the fact that there was a pig. Okay, she or he. I don't want to say it. She or he. Okay, ended up on your plate, and now he or she's excrement is flooding homes that live near these pig warehouses, is what they are. I don't want to use the word farms. I mean, if you're calling an animal live inventory, that's not what I feel farmers would do. Okay? That's a business term. We've reduced them to mere things in our mind, and it's so we want to stay so far away from the truth as we can that we can't even discuss the fact that they're victims. They are less than victims. Put that in your pipe and smoke it for a minute, because it's really a mark of how morally bankrupt our society has come in this arena on this issue. And this has to be a wake-up call. This has to be a come to Jesus moment, whatever phrase you want to use for our society. And we have to keep this conversation going. And the first thing anyone who's upset about this needs to do is stop supporting this industry, stop buying animals and eating them or their byproducts. That's number one. The switch couldn't be easier today. Number two, we have to help these quote unquote farmers transition into something that's sustainable. And I've been working with Renee King-Sonnen of the Rowdy Girl Sanctuary, who has a rancher's transition program. Nobody is even pointing the finger. Ultimately, it's a consumer issue. And there's a great meme to that effect, where one of the other people we talked to, Dom Thompson, just felt inspired to do a meme that said, you know, animals dying by the millions. Is it the farmer's fault? Is it, you know, the government's fault? Is it the fault of consumers who are eating these products? None of it would exist if people didn't buy this food. So if you had to issue a call to people being there, I mean, what are you experiencing? You're living in this horror for a week, sleeping on bridges. I can't even imagine what you're going through.
Yeah, it's terribly, terribly unpleasant. Because we're here as documentarians, though, of course, we have to, for me, I have to kind of put the emotions aside and work very quickly to get the best possible images that people can connect with. But, you know, deal with the emotions later. But the result of that is extreme exhaustion. I will say, constant extreme exhaustion, because I do this all the time. But it's...
Where are these photos going to go? How are you going to get them out to the public?
We're working with The Guardian. We're working with some major media outlets. NPR just put out a piece with Barbara J. King. It's wonderful. People are interested, and that is great. We also make all the images available for free, all the film as well, available for free at weanimalsarchive.org. And this is so that, you know, people can use them to help animals. We just need people sharing the images, shouting about it, asking their local media to share the stories.
Yeah, and once again, this photo happens to be from Ethically Elizabeth when she was on the ground. We also had a meme that we got from Dom Thompson, who is urging people. He's an African American, and he's urging particularly communities of color, stop supporting this. It's killing neighborhoods of people in our community. Have you talked to any of these people who are in the direct line of this excrement tsunami?
Yeah, actually, today is going to be our main day. We have interviews scheduled, so you reached us a day sort of ahead of us doing that. But, you know, we are surrounded by locals who are just incredulous about what's happening. But, you know, even some of them don't want to talk about not eating pigs. They just don't want the manure lagoons. You know, it's really interesting, like how ingrained eating these animals is, because they don't want to hear about not eating animals. They just want to hear about no lagoons.
Yeah, exactly. Well, guess what? If you have an animal, anybody who has an animal, anybody who knows anything about being alive, it's a sign of life. You know, excrement. Okay, it comes with the territory. So if you don't want excrement, you can't have animals. And so I just want to reiterate that please, everybody, share this video. Share this video, and let's start a national conversation about transitioning these farms, so-called farms, these warehouses where animals are considered live inventory, and basically it's an insurance write-off. You know, that's the bottom line. And call for them not to be restocked. And I invite any farmer on to discuss this at any time. You can just instant message me on Facebook. I'd love to talk to you. And B, I think we need to get these people who've been impacted. Joanne and Kelly, I urge you to get some phone numbers for us, because we would like to talk to these people. And we feel like they should come together and talk to the national media and say, we don't want this. If in fact they don't want it, which is what it sounds like in spades, who would want to live next to this? And the other thing is, this is not just a crime against animals. You know, it's not a crime legally, so I can't say it's a crime legally. But this isn't just a moral outrage about the animal issue. It's just these communities, these poor communities, having to live and experience the brunt of this. It's an environmental disaster, and you know, it's a health problem for the people who live there, and it's a health problem for the people who eat pigs, processed meat, which is how most people eat a lot of pig in the form of bacon and ham and deli slices, is officially cancer causing. According to the World Health Organization, it causes cancer. Yeah. It's a carcinogen. And so all of this so that we can eat something that's cancer causing? I mean, I have no words almost to describe how self-destructive this is as a culture. And of course, let's not rely on the government, because the governments, the institutions like the USDA are pretty much controlled by the meat and dairy industry. They've got all their executives and all their people in there. So their mandate is to promote it. So we need to all stand up as a society. Anybody who's upset about this, we need to stand up. We need to start going to the Facebook pages of news media and saying, you know, shut these. We need a hashtag. And I know Rowdy Sanctuary said end animal agriculture. You know, no more factory farms. No more end animal warehouses. How about that? End animal warehouses.
I said there are people here who are not making the connection, but there also are lots of people who are speaking up and organizing town halls. And yeah, like Rick Dove is one of the leaders, Larry Baldwin. And we've sent you their connection, their emails.
Yeah.
There are people who are just heroes in this community, and we'll make sure that you can get in touch with them. And as for us, as for us, we actually have to head out to the field in a couple of minutes.
Yes.
We're heading into the thick of things again for our last day of shooting, but you wanted to.
Oh, I was just going to emphasize they do so at great personal risk. They've received death threats from farmers. This is an incredibly powerful and corrupt industry. So if you're worried about not seeing a lot of organization or speaking out on the ground, these are very vulnerable people who are living in these evil corporations' backyards. So the ones who are speaking up, we need to amplify their voices, because they sure as heck deserve to be heard.
Well, I want to thank you. You guys are my heroes. I just am so blown away by the amazing work you're doing. Stay safe. Please stay safe.
Trying.
Yourselves and bring us up to date. And if you can find anybody who is willing to talk, please let me know. We need to end animal warehouses now. Hashtag end animal warehouses, and share this video. Thank you so much, Joanne McArthur and Kelly Guerin. Talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.